Hi guys, it's Jackie with Intoxicating Arts, and today we're making a engagement card for one of my best friends, and I'm using the zipper panel die by Julie Ebersol. It's the Essentials by Ellen that I showed in a recent haul, and then this awesome acetate pad by We Are Memory Keepers, the stamp set from the most recent Simon Says stamp card kit, and then a few scraps of paper from the paper pad that was included in that kit. So to start off this card, I'm going to take a piece of pink cardstock and I'm just going to trim that down to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and that's going to be the card base. Then I took the gold polka dots and I'm going to trim this down to 4 by 5 1/4. And I did that because I wanted to have just a thin 1/4 inch border going all the way around. You could definitely have these be the exact same size if you wanted to, and I think it would look just as nice. So here's what that looks like with the little bit of a border around it. Next, I'm going to take this Exacto ruler, and this ruler is unique in the fact that it has the 0 in the middle and then it goes out from there counting up, and then there's some holes in the ruler so it will allow me to pierce through, and I'm going to puncture 2 holes in this using a needle, and that's because I want to thread some ribbon through it. The Tim Holtz design ruler also has the same functionality if you have one of those. So I'm just doing each hole on either side of the 0, and that's going to give me some perfectly spaced holes. Now I pulled this tool that I have that's actually for use with clay, and all I'm doing is kind of wiggling that in there and widening up these holes, but not too wide, because once I get the ribbon in there, I only want you to see the ribbon. I don't want there to be like this huge gaping hole. That's why I didn't use my punch to do this, because I have a couple different punches that I could have used, but one was too big and the smaller one didn't reach far enough in. So to thread my ribbon through here, I'm actually going to take that needle back out that I was using. This is kind of a huge needle. I don't know specifically what it's for, but I'm just going to thread the very tip of my ribbon through the needle. Not the way you would normally thread a needle, you know, where you put it all the way through and then pull it. So just the tip right here so that I can poke it through, and you'll see that it actually, the needle releases from it, but it did it after the little tip of that came through, so I'm able to pull the rest of it through with my finger. So this gives me a really tight fit there. And I did the same thing on the other side, and then I just tied a bow in it. So the whole point of doing this originally was to have a nice, elegant way to hold the acetate onto my pink piece of paper. But in the end, because we're adding a cardstock cake, really we could have just put glue underneath where the cake is. But because I have this pretty bow on here, I'm gonna not put glue underneath all that. But I really love the added oomph that this pretty ribbon gives this card. So now I'm taking my zipper panel die, and this isn't really the way you're supposed to use it, but I just wanted to cut out all of those words at once. So I just put them all through. I was being lazy. I didn't feel like snipping it apart. And then I'm just going to poke out the little piece of paper here. This is a black piece of paper from Simon Says stamp that was included in the last kit. I really love how nice and thick it is. So I popped it on there because originally I didn't really know what I was going to do with this card, and I was like, wow, that is really bare and it definitely needs something else. So that's when I started to pull out my scraps, and I'm just kind of looking around trying to figure out what I want to do with these scraps. And I remembered that recently I had pinned on Pinterest a card where they use little paper scraps to make a wedding cake, and I thought that was so cool. But I didn't have the measurements for it, and again, I was just being lazy, I guess, not wanting to look it up. So all I did was take the middle piece and I trimmed that down until it looked the way that I thought would look nice. And then I used the measurement from that middle piece to give me the measurements for the top and the bottom piece. So they're all the exact same height of 1¼ inch, and then the top one is 1/2 of an inch shorter and the bottom one is 1/2 of an inch longer than the middle piece. And luckily my eyes did not deceive me, and these measurements ended up looking really nice on an A2 size card. To make these look a little rounded, I took my We Are Memory Keepers corner chomper and I used the 1/4 inch side. There's a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch side on these. And I'm just going to chomp the 2 top corners on these. And that just gives it a little bit more of a rounded appearance. And then I'm going to stack these on top of each other, actually kind of butting them up against each other. There's no overlap on them at all. And I'm just kind of looking at that, flipping around the piece, seeing if that is actually the side of the pattern paper that I wanted to use. And I did decide to go with what I initially wanted to. Now, I showed this glue in my recent haul, and I found this interesting. It says it will bond any porous to porous or porous to non-porous surface. So I figured this would be an awesome way to test it out because I'm going from paper to acetate, so porous to non-porous. And a lot of glues will not do that. And I didn't even notice that when I purchased it. I kind of just was like, hey, this has a fine tip. It's a new glue. I'm going to get it. And luckily it held really well. I even tested it afterwards and it's definitely stuck on there. I didn't use a ton of it, but I did want to put an acrylic block down on this because it was starting to curl up and I didn't want it to dry that way and have my acetate piece be all curled up. So just using that as a weight here. And then I'm going to take my congrats piece that you see right there, and I use the quickie glue pen on that to adhere it down. And then I will just put the block right back on there to hold everything together while it dries. So this card is almost done. The last thing that I need to do is put it on a card base, and this is one of the cream colored Simon Says stamp cardstocks that came in the last card kit. Just put my ATG adhesive on the back of that and then try to get this lined up perfectly here. Then I was looking at my card, thinking about taking my shots to finish this. And I realized that it was missing something. There was nothing on the inside. And I had that Simon Says stamp Floral Bliss stamp set out from the last card kit. And then also the Distress ink and Worn Lipstick from the last card kit. So I took the Let the Bliss Begin sentiment. Just going to ink that up really quick. And I'm just putting it on the acrylic block. I didn't feel like pulling out my stamp positioner for this. But I definitely ran a risk doing this because I tend to push kind of hard. So I kind of got a little bit of a smudge on the I and the N, and the card started to want to fold up on me while I was doing this, so that kind of just determined the spot that it was going to be, but I think it looks good enough. Definitely not horrible, so I didn't want to pull it all apart to do it again. So this is what the card ended up looking like. I really like how this came out, and I think I'm going to make one more card kind of using this card kit. I didn't want to call this a card kit card, even though it definitely uses a ton of stuff from the kit. So I'm sure if you have just a few things in your stash, you might be able to replicate this. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Bye!